Hello, everyone. My name is Max Retschke,
I'm Kyle Mitchell.
I'm Danny Sullivan.
I'm TJ Ray.
And I'm
and,
Noah
to-
John Marker.
and today we will be discussing the authenticity paradox by Herminia Ibarra. Overall, we'll do an overview of the article, discuss the practical implications of the article, describe what we thought of it overall, and finally discuss various extensions of it. So, this article discusses authentic leadership, what it means to be an authentic leader, as well as why many executives fail to be authentic leaders, how other executives succeed in being authentic leaders, and overall how leaders today can become more authentic. So when trying to define authenticity, many executives come across an issue in which there are two rigid definitions of being authentic or conflicts with existing definitions. For example, one way you could say a leader is authentic is that they are being true to themselves. But the problem with this is what exactly is one's true self? Because bosses and leaders can take on many different identities depending on who they're speaking with. Otherwise, authenticity can be described as maintaining strict coherence between what you feel and what you say or do. So essentially, your internal self is aligned with your external self. How you normally feel is reflected in what you normally do. But at the same time, this can drastically change over time as well as with the situation. So again, we have this issue of trying to determine what it means to be authentic. And on a more personal level, you try and make choices that are based on your values. But the issue with that is you can sometimes try and take too much of a hands-on approach or get too wrapped up in certain areas. And it might lead to issues with attempting to delegate authority to different people while you're trying to make all of the decisions by yourself. So overall, it's a real issue trying to define authenticity in such a way where it's consistent across businesses and leaders can ensure they're being authentic in the right way. The article also discusses two different types of leaders, chameleons and true to selfers. Chameleons are individuals who can take on new identities more readily depending on the situation at hand. These individuals are highly adaptable to different issues and are able to uh, easily move from one personality to the other. Conversely, true to selfers really try and bring out this one identity that they feel or associate very strongly with. Unfortunately, even though they're being true to themselves, it can create a lot of issues within organizations as they're not assuming the role that might most benefit the organization, and they may reveal too much information or display a lack of confidence that reflects poorly on the business. Additionally, some leaders hesitate to sell themselves and the ideas that they have. For some leaders, it might be because they have a bit too much humility, and in other cases, it's more so because they don't have all of the information and they feel like they might be lying to consumers. But essentially, some leaders find it much more difficult to discuss themselves and some of the ideas. This lack of effective communication makes it much more difficult for leaders to display themselves as being authentic or trying to be honest with the individuals they're working with, but also confident with the individuals they're working with. And finally, some individuals just have trouble processing negative feedback. No matter how many times they hear negative feedback, it becomes difficult for them to integrate it and try something new to make their leadership more authentic. The unfortunate reality is that they'll go back to familiar habits in trying to solve difficult situations, and their habits just might not work. So, in recommendation to improve these leaders as well as their roles in the organization, there are three recommendations the article makes: learning from diverse role models, setting learning goals, and adapting their stories. If your own leadership style just isn't working for the organization, then look to other leadership styles people have used previously. Although this won't be original, it will be help you adapt your leadership style to better suit the organization. It'll create a much more diverse way for you to handle different situations. As a result of trying to learn new leadership styles, it's important to set leadership goals. These will ensure that you're constantly working to practice new leadership goals that you weren't. This will help you practice leadership goals uh, that you haven't quite practiced enough. It'll help you set new standards for yourself and bring about new ways to change and alter yourself to become a more effective leader. And finally, when adapting your story, you're thinking about how it is you want people not just to see you, but how you want to carry out your leadership style in such a way that will not only reflect well on you, but also the organization. Essentially, how do you want your story to unfold? And depending on what you think and what others say, try and assume a role that will make your story the best it can be.
People, managers, and human resource management professionals alike all struggle with remaining authentic and true to oneself at times. This article provides material that helps those people find the right approach for themselves and provide value for the organization in which they work for. While it can feel empowering to try and stick to your initial values, methods, and traits that you feel define who you are, the article acknowledges that you should understand how you can evolve as a person and a leader through experience. The article acknowledges several reasons why leaders struggle with authenticity. These include that we make more frequent, more radical changes in the kinds of work we do. Many of us work with people who don't share our specific cultural norms and have different expectations of how we should behave. And identities are always on display in today's world of ubiquitous connectivity and social media. The article also covers several situations where we often see managers struggle with authenticity. These include taking charge in an unfamiliar role, selling your ideas and oneself, and processing negative feedback. The article recognizes the importance of gaining outsight rather than strictly insight. By taking on new projects and activities and being open to new possibilities, we begin to develop our leadership behaviors rather than remaining fenced in and creatures of habit. Being authentic is not sticking to what you know, but rather taking elements you've learned from many others and making them your own. As Wilson Mitzer had stated, it is better to research from many sources than plagiarize from one specifically. Setting goals for learning and not just performance helps us to develop valued attributes. And lastly, it is important that in trying to relate with others that we use stories about ourselves that will effectively relate to the people we are addressing them to. And how it helps us, these materials help us become better managers and HR professionals in a number of areas. It helps in the training and development area by earning trust in your new or developing workforce, as authenticity and trust go hand in hand. It also helps with fostering more engagement with one's employees. When a worker finds a business where they trust the business, the leaders, and are actively engaged in their work, employee turnover or career changes decrease greatly. Leaders are often expected to express ideas assertively and to claim credit for them and to use charisma to motivate and inspire people. However, this could go against being an authentic leader if you don't completely agree with all those specific methods. Giving a personal story about a hardship you overcame can be authentic in America, as it touches on ideals of self-disclosure, humility, and individualistic triumph over adversity. However, these ideals very likely will not translate across all cultures, especially those that are more collectivist than in America. Leaders that can find a great balance between being authentic and learning and developing new and better leadership techniques will obtain more value for their organization, as they will have a distinctive competence in areas of trust and employee engagement than most other organizations will not have.
I'll be going over the positives from this article. First, it was very easy to read and it flowed great. It touched on a lot of examples and gave supporting details. The article did a great job of showing a few examples like Cynthia and George, who struggle having to decide if they need to change the way they're used to conducting business. Later on in the article, it went into great detail about how Cynthia thought she was setting herself up for success by opening up to the team, but it actually made her vulnerable, and they resented that. And it gives a great example about how one has to be careful when they open up to employees. And then something else that was a positive was you shouldn't just copy one person's leadership style. You should like tap into many other diverse role models so you can build your own leadership style that way. And then Noah's going to touch on the negatives.
The negatives portion of the critique part. Although the article by Ibarra was able to express real-life examples of misfortunate situations regarding the authenticity of newly established managers, I feel as though this article could have gone in more depth explaining the complete background of the managers spoken about in this article, such as Cynthia and George, for example. Later in the article, when Ibarra began explaining the factors of processing negative feedback, it was explained that when receiving feedback from team members or coworkers, the use of negative feedback often centers on style rather than skills and expertise. The use of this type of mentality when presenting feedback leads to biased opinions, veering away from the aspects that truly matter within the business. Overall, throughout the article, it did well at educating the audience through real-life workplace examples of what had happened to employees when promoted into a management position to find out their true authenticities. But I feel as though the article should have expressed these examples beyond what had happened into how these managers followed the tactics presented by Ibarra to improve their management style and proceed onto the correct course of managerial success.
Now, although this article is applicable to many different fields, the one I'm going to focus on is the military in particular. Starting off with the authenticity and the comfort. In the military, they try to do as much as they can to get people away from feeling comfortable, and that kind of helps them develop as a person. In the Navy SEALs in particular, in Hell Week, they'll force them to cover themselves in sand after going into the water and then run multiple miles, not because it makes them a better runner, just because it's uncomfortable. And by doing things that aren't comfortable, it's going to kind of help you evolve and do things you wouldn't normally do by getting you out of your comfort zone. In the authenticity and appearance, so certain people have to act certain ways, and they try to keep up this image in front of other people. Although when they go into other different countries and they have different social norms, they may alter and how they act and act in different ways to kind of help make themselves more accepted by the local people. Talking about the taking charge in an unfamiliar role, that kind of talks about the chameleon versus the true selfer. And chameleons are people that alter themselves to fit the role that they're put into. And some of the people that join the military don't naturally have the mindset of how to act and behave, but they're able to kind of make themselves act that way so they can continue to go through the training and operate at the same level as everyone else. But then they're the true selfers who act in a certain way, and they may have the correct mindset, but in the military, they need to adapt and grow as they gain experiences, which is a common issue with the true selfers. For example, Cynthia was very open and willing to share with all of her workers and what was going on, but it made them doubt her. It made them doubt her and not have confidence in her. So as you go up in the ranks in the military, they can't exhibit doubt, or other people will kind of be hesitant to follow their orders. So having a combination of these two mindsets is something that is very crucial, especially in the workforce, but also in the military, to kind of help people want to follow you and listen to what you have to say. And then the next thing that they focused on was selling your ideas. So in the military, to motivate the soldiers, they are often selling their ideas, which are using emotional messages to influence and inspire the soldiers. Officers will tell soldiers how much good they are going to be doing where they go, and it drives them and keeps them going. This is also something that is done within the different ranks. So true selfers believe that their hard work and accomplishments will get them noticed and they may get promoted, but others believe that you have to sell yourself and get a promotion. So as people gain more experience in the military, they're more likely to sell themselves because they know they have the experience and knowledge to be able to do and operate at that higher rank. The next thing that the article talked about was processing negative feedback. So both in life and in the military, people are going to have to process negative feedback. When people are being trained in the military, a lot of what they're going to see is negative feedback, and that's because people's lives are at risk, so you can't mess up. It is how the soldiers react to this feedback and adapt that's important because, like the article said, it takes time and it can be because if you don't change, it takes up time and it can that could be devoted to the strategic pursuits, what is imperative for the company, or in this case, the military. So as you progress through training and you're deployed, officers may receive negative feedback from their superiors. And this is where processing the negative feedback is actually very important in the military because as Noah kind of talked about, if you don't kind of focus on the style, but the other things, they may take it personally and people may kind of push you away, kind of like what they talked about with Margaret Thatcher. And next thing they talked about was a playful frame of mind. You need to experiment with new ways of getting things done and constantly change how things operate because the world around us is constantly changing. So you need to look for new plans when you're going to do a mission and and to look at each person, what they did, and change it slightly. So often people look within themselves for answers on how to do things, but this kind of brings you back to the old way that you used to do things and not look at the future because everything's evolving. A little subcategory of it was learn diverse role models. So you don't need to focus everything you learn from one person. You need to look at many different aspects and perspectives. In the military, they have different schools for different things, such as sniper school or ammunition school. And each school, you're going to learn from many different people on how to operate. And this kind of gives you the perspective for multiple different roles. And then you can incorporate this knowledge into your own, the way you teach people. So that way they're not just learning from you, but they're learning from other people, and they'll incorporate other people's ideas as well. Also, you need to work on getting better. You need to set goals for learning. In the military, you could say you want to learn how to read the wind better, or you want to learn how to adjust a shot based off how it hits. You need to set goals for yourself on how to improve, and they don't need to be performance-based goals. They can be education-based goals. And then the last thing is don't stick to your story. You need to believe in your story and change it as you change. People are constantly evolving, and in the military, somebody may set a goal for themselves to be more disciplined, and they may use that as their motivation to progress. But as time goes on, their goals may change, and they want to be there to protect people and keep people's freedom. So they need to change their goal to kind of keep themselves motivated as well as keep the people around them motivated.
Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you understand a bit better how to become a more authentic leader.